Oh, the time.
Oh, the chair.
Oh, there's a chair here actually.
Six, right?
Stay there. I'll be right there. Just move it down, was it?
Members, please be outstanding. Have words from the Mayor, Councillor Lewis Reardon.
That was the handles on.
Yeah, of course.
Good evening, members. Thank you for coming. Before we start, I'd like to hand over to the Reverend Rachel Phillips, my chaplain, who's going to say a prayer for we commence the meeting.
Good evening, everybody. Let us pray. Loving God, thank you for our town and thank you for this town council. Thank you for the opportunities we have to be of service to our community and for this opportunity to meet. And we pray for Dunstable and all its people, for everyone who lives here or works here or visits or passes through, and for all the people represented by each councillor here. And we hold in our prayers those of our neighbours who are sad or sick at this time, those who are anxious, bereaved or struggling, and those people who dread this time of year. Help us to lead this community in serving and caring for all people according to their needs. And we pray for your blessing for each member of this council and for all the officers and staff of Dunstable Town Council who work so hard for our benefit and our well-being. Bless this meeting. Give wisdom to each person here as they consider the matters to be discussed. Give them a desire to listen and to serve all those they represent. Give them confidence and the ability to disagree well, and help them all to work together for the common good. Bless them as they bless us, our town, and all its people. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so first item on the agenda, are there any apologies? Got apologies from Councillor John Goodman. Here, okay. The next item on the agenda is find the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 30th of September as a correct record. Do I have your authority to sign those minutes? Sorry. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda are declarations of interest. Are there any specific declarations of interest relating to this evening's agenda? Okay, if anybody should have a declaration at any point during the meeting, you may disclose it. And then the next item is the chair's remarks. You will see that I have attended quite a lot since our last meeting. I won't go through them all. Probably the most notable was obviously the remembrance service on Sunday the 9th of November, which was actually a really well attended event. It was really good to see so many people come out and support that event, and it went really well. It was also good to see that the additional seating was needed at the back of the church. And then also the short service we had on the following day, on Monday, which was also well attended. Obviously, since then, we have had torchlight procession on Friday night that just passed. Huge event, massive, well done to all of the the council officers that were involved in organising it, and of course those that attended too. Thanks to Councillor Liz Jones for co-presenting with me and helping me with her experience on the night. I think that's probably the main ones that I wanted to talk about. The next item is public question time. We've not been notified of any requests for questions from the public, so we shall move on to committee reports. I'm going to call on the relevant chairs in turn to present their reports. In accordance with usual practice, I will then call out the appropriate minute numbers and would ask members to indicate whether they wish to ask any questions or make remarks. And the first one is community services. I call on Councillor Liz Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to propose that the minutes of the community services meeting held on the 4th of November be approved.
Is that seconded?
Madam Mayor, I'm pleased to second.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. All those in. So sorry, excuse me. Yes, so we do need to vote, sorry. Right, apologies. So, meeting held on 4th November, community services. We've got minute 225 to 4, 226, 227, 228, 229, 230, 231, 232, 233, 234, 235, 236, 237, 238, and 239. It has been moved and seconded that the report be received. All those in favour? That is unanimous. I declare that motion to be carried. Thank you. Okay, so next is grounds and environmental services. I call on Councillor Richard Atwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I recommend that the grounds and environmental services meetings held on the 11th of November is recommended to members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Atwell. Is that seconded?
Madam Mayor, I'm pleased to second.
Thank you, Councillor Crawley. Okay, so minute number 240, 241, 242, 243, 244, 5.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just looking at 245 and the agreement with Central Bedfordshire Council to look after the planters, I'm wondering if anyone can confirm that the damaged planters will be replaced by CBC, which I think was under their auspices.
Okay, thank you. Crawley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we've notified CBC of the damaged planters. They haven't said whether they're going to repair them or not. I have actually had a meeting with their new head of highways today on a number of matters. And it appears that she is not the person who is responsible for organising with us the various arrangements that need to be made for that and for the care generally. But she is going to try and put me in touch with the right people in her organisation that we can then have that further conversation with. But to date, a number of them have been repaired, but those that require replacement are part of the replacement programme at the moment. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, John. Councillor Jones.
Just on that matter, the planter that got actually damaged and removed opposite a Claire or outside of Claire Hair Fashions, the trader has actually raised concern with Central Bedfordshire Councillor Carol Hegley, as well as myself, because they've been left extremely vulnerable of traffic turning out of Queensway, and we wondered whether there was opportunity for one of the planters outside the post office, the smaller planters potentially, to be moved to reposition where that planter had been taken out by a vehicle a couple of months back now. So if that was a conversation that you could have, we would be grateful for any extra support in getting that done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Okay, so minute 246, 247. Oh, apologies, Councillor Holly. On which one are you wanting to?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's 247 Green Space Projects. It was just an update if there is one on the phone box project, which we've obviously been through going to local contractors for quotes, and they came in over budget. And since then, we've approached specialist restorers and we're waiting on the quotes. And I was wondering if any of those quotes had come back.
Councillor Holly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, the situation is that we have had quotations back. They are much cheaper than the local providers. That's because we've gone to companies who actually specialise in this sort of work. The best price is to do a refurbishment in situ, and we're actually going through those prices at the moment with a view to appointing a contractor. I hope we'll be able to appoint a contractor sometime towards the end of next week, but certainly before Christmas.
Thank you, John. Okay, so moving on to minute 248, 249, 250, 251.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
just a quick note on the wording used in these reports of no updates. It suggests that there was no report made, where in fact it should be there was nothing to report. And that's a minor issue, but just the indication of the wording.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Katalski. Clarifying that. 252. Okay, so it has been moved and seconded that the report be received. Those in favour? Is unanimous. I declare that motion to be carried. Thank you. So next is Finance and General Purposes Committee held on the 18th of November. I call on Councillor Gregory William.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to propose the minutes of the Finance and General Purposes Committee held on the 18th of November to the Council.
Thank you, Councillor Alderman. Is that seconded?
Just a second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Katarski. Okay, so 265, 66, 267, 268, 269, 0, 271, 72, 273, 274, 275. Councillor Holly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just a slight correction, I think. Ashton Schools Foundation, Councillor Hollick advised that the funds have really transformed the school. What I stated and what the funds have been doing is transforming both Manshead and Ashton St Peters. So it's both schools have benefited from the sale of Ashton Middle School. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hollick, for that clarification. Moving on to 276, 277, 278. Okay, it has been moved and seconded that the report be received. Those in favour? Is unanimous. I declare that motion to be carried. Okay, so the next item is the action tracker. And there is just one action, which is an update about the market charter. It was agreed at the September Community Services Committee to continue to apply the Council's market rights policy. So this matter is actually now complete on the tracker. The next item on the agenda is to receive the minutes of the Dunstable Joint Committee held on 19th September 2024.
We still haven't received the minutes of that meeting, so once we do receive them, we will circulate them. Actually, there hasn't been a meeting since the last full council, so there's no verbal update from Councillor Alderman since the last meeting.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, so moving on to item 287, which is the draft budget for 25-26. Members will be aware that since the report was published, there have been various emails and discussions about possible options for reducing the budget for next year. Officers have undertaken that the papers for the next committee round include each of the options discussed with members to enable proper discussion. Recommendation is that the council consider the draft revenue budget enclosed appendices 1 and 2 for this report and agree to adopt a balanced budget as proposed at the meeting of the council on the 3rd of February 2025.
Yeah, the proposal is to adopt it at the meeting.
Okay, to adopt a balanced budget on the 3rd of February 2025.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So members, you've all received the budget report, and Madam Mayor's just finally mentioned the action recommended is to consider the draft revenue budget included at the appendices 1 and 2 with the report and agree to adopting a balanced budget as proposed to the meeting of the council on the 3rd of February 2025. The report included an explanation of the budget setting process, the previous year's precepts, the significant growths and savings across all of the budgets, as well as notification that Central Bedfordshire Council have informed us that the tax base has reduced this for 25-26 from 13,338 to 13,335 for next financial year. As members know, that since this report was prepared, we have had an informal meeting. There's been various discussions over emails. Some members have come in for meetings with myself and Paul, so members will be advised that officers will provide options for discussion based on all of the correspondence we've received and discussions we've had for the next round of the budget discussions committee.
Thank you, Lisa. Any comments or questions on that?
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a point of clarification. I did send a proposed amendment. I wonder, is this the right, in terms of the conversation on the amendment, is this the right place to propose it, or this would go, as you said, to the different committee, or should I make an effort to have the discussion there? If you clarify that for me, I will be able to.
So Councillor Johnson sent issued a proposed amendment to the recommendation, which I've circulated. The substance of the amendment is 4 items, and for them all to be sent back or referred to each of those committees for further discussion. So the amendment doesn't recommend we make any decisions on those things now, but it does recommend that those items are clearly discussed at each of those committees, and we're certainly happy to provide reports which clearly describe what the impact would be at each of those options, along with any other options which members may make now or have made or might make between now and the next meeting. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, that does answer my question. If I just come back, Madam Mayor, I mean, all I'm going to say in that case is, if members are happy for those proposed amendments to go as been set out, I'm absolutely happy to take it as it is without a vote.
Tomorrow's proposed amendment, so it does need somebody to second the amendment and then a vote on the amendment.
Okay.
I'll second it to go back. I'm happy to second it to go back to committee.
Okay. Alcoholic. So all those in favour of the amendment?
So the proposal is to amend the report's recommendation to require that the 4 items recommended, which are to consider amending the reserves, to consider a reduction in publication costs and talk of the town, to consider a review of the 40th anniversary expenditure, and to consider the plans for the future of downstairs area of Grove House in the next committee cycle. So it's not making decisions on those things, but it's amending the recommendation to specifically include that we consider those in the next committee cycle.
So did you all receive a copy of that motion that was sent earlier on today?
I haven't had a chance to review that properly because I've been up, I mean, most people have probably been at work, so.
Shall I read the detail of it? I mean, and to be fair, it's not, I don't think there's anything controversial in saying that committees discuss it because we're not making a decision on it anyway.
So can I just, Madam Mayor, can I just ask a clarification question, which I think Paul outlined, which is that these suggestions are in addition to any other suggestions that councillors may make at any of these committees. So they're not, we're not prioritising those suggestions. We're just considering them alongside others. Thank you.
Each one of those?
Well, so I just read out the whole thing. That the council agrees to reassess its reserves and spending structure to prioritise savings and reduce its financial impact on taxpayers. To this end, I recommend the following measures for discussion within the appropriate committees. Reserves adjustment plan. The council should agree to build its reserves over a 3 to 4 year period by phasing the accumulation of general reserves. The maximum amount needed would not be taken in the first year of the budget. This approach would reduce the precept increase in the current year and level out the financial impact over the following years. Reduction in publication costs. The council should reduce the number of the Talk of the Town publications from 3 per year to 2, generating a saving of 10,137. Thirdly, to review the 40th year anniversary expenditure. The decision regarding the council's 40th anniversary celebration should be returned to committee for reassessment. This review should focus on identifying potential savings, especially given that financial concerns were not adequately addressed in the initial committee discussions. And fourth, the Grove House, the Finance and General Purposes Committee should review whether to proceed with developing plans to raise income from hiring the council chamber and wedding room for general use as well as weddings, or whether the council should just seek to lease the space out again for 2 or 3 years to reduce the council's immediate liability. These measures aim to balance fiscal responsibility with the council's commitment to serving its community, mitigating the immediate financial impact on taxpayers while ensuring sustainable financial planning for the future. So that's the substance of the amendment. If I can make one comment as officers on that, I think our view would be we would much rather they were discussed in a committee with a report attached to them than this evening when you've just heard that information. So it kind of makes sense to agree the amendment and then go through it all in committee, I'd suggest.
Okay, so it's been proposed by Councillor Tamara, it's been seconded by Councillor Hollick. Is everybody happy with what's been?
So I think I think I'll be voting in terms of supporting the idea of discussion of these points, but I don't want that to be construed as me supporting all of these. I think some of them I'm more interested in than others. I've got concerns about point 1 particularly and point 4. But yes, I'm minded to support it in terms of I would enable further discussion in future meetings.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be good for these items to go back to those relevant committees to be discussed again to look at any additional options. But of course, it's not something we're agreeing here. We're just agreeing the amendment to go back to those committees. So that basis has been seconded. So all those in favour of the amendment? I think that's unanimous. Okay, well, so that carried, and then we need to. Okay, so, the.
Yeah, it was said that there were perhaps other amendments as well from other members. I'm just wondering if there are any that need to be discussed in the same way, simply referring back, because I thought there was another one on the cards. Maybe not.
So it's 5 minutes. So members obviously have to, well, very welcome to propose additional amendments now, but I would also say that if you do have suggestions or requests to go on agendas, we're very happy to include anything on within logical reason, obviously. But in particular to note that there will be a meeting of the newly formed Grounds Working Group on the 19th, Thursday the 19th at 10 AM. So Councillor Atwell, Councillor Gutarski, Councillor Tamara and Councillor Alderman have all agreed to be on that, but other members would be welcome to take part if you're available at that time. So for example, I'd imagine that group will then come out with some recommendations which will go into the grounds report as well. But if there are other items you would like reflected, then mention them now or do contact us in the next week or two.
Thank you, Paul. So yeah, so we've had our first initial informal discussion regarding the budget, and we will have more discussions. It's not been finalised yet. So on that basis, that the recommendation here is that the council consider the draft revenue budget enclosed at appendices 1 and 2 with this report and agree to adopt a balanced budget as proposed at the meeting of the council on the 3rd of February 2025. Do I have a proposer for that recommendation?
Speak for, please. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Mayor Chairman. So I understand. Sorry. So I appreciate all the work that was gone into this by the officers, and I'm not going to be downplaying any hard work that's gone into this budget. But last year I made quite a big song and dance about an over 5% increase to the precept. This year it's treble that. I'm not going to be able to fully support this, and not through any fault of the officers. There's been barriers put in place to what can be taken out of the budget by other people and by what can be changed. So I won't be able to fully support this. I will be abstaining from this because I understand the value of putting for a balanced budget, but I just can't support the increase to the precept, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Foley. Councillor Anderson.
Madam Mayor, for a point of clarification, I didn't think this recommendation was supporting a balanced budget based on a 15% increase in the precept. If it is, then I couldn't agree either. I think it was saying that you're proposing to prepare a balanced budget, but it will be based on what we discussed at the various different committees and the proposals we put forward at the meeting in February, not based on what the appendices are currently here necessarily.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. That's also my understanding, is that we're going to look at additional ways that we might be able to make more savings to make it more balanced. That's smart.
I would just say, Madam Mayor, that that's not quite clear, because you are looking at the appendix in this document and proposing that the future budget is not totally based on this, because we've just recommended that we're going to go back to committee and look at these details. But based on the recommendation on this appendix, we are looking at what has already been presented to us, not what we're going to discuss. I think that's, if Town Clerk can clarify that.
Yes, sure.
So members, we're getting into discussing how we're voting on a report rather than discussing the substance of the budget, which is, I'm sure, not what you want to do. Apologies, the recommendation isn't as clear as it might be. I agree the recommendation could be read as asking you to agree a balanced budget now, which, given comments just made, then becomes a subject that some of you might not be comfortable voting on. I suggest the best approach may be just to agree to defer this item to the next council meeting, given that we've already agreed the practical approach we're taking, so we're on the same page pragmatically. So maybe just agree to defer this item and then we'll go through the process.
Okay. It's Mara.
Madam Mayor, I will stand to make that recommendation, that this particular agenda be deferred to the next council meeting.
Okay, well, councillor tomorrow has proposed that this be deferred to the next meeting. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hollick. All those in favour for deferring this item? Unanimous. Okay, well, we declare that motion to be carried in that case. Thank you. Okay, the next item is to receive and note the outcome of the external audit for the financial year 23-24. Lisa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so members, this report also went to Finance General Purposes Committee, but just to confirm that we received the 2023-24 external audit report in October, at the end of September, and just on the on page 46, it states, on the basis of our review of sections 1 and 2 of the annual governance and accountability return, also known as the AGAR, in our opinion, the information in sections 1 and 2 of the AGAR is in accordance with proper practices, and no other matters have come to our attention giving cause to concern that relevant legislation and regularity requirements have not been met. I'm pleased to present that the external audit was all completed successfully.
Lisa, any comments or questions on that item? Okay, so do I have a proposal to receive and note the outcome of the external audit for financial year 2024? Thank you, Councillor Woodman. Seconder, Councillor Katarski. All those in favour? That is unanimous. I declare that motion to be carried. Thank you. Okay, so the next item is the annual town meeting. It's just to receive the report for the annual town meeting. Sorry, I'm going to hand over to Paul to explain this part.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the report hasn't got a recommendation that it's for information, but obviously happy to take comments and suggestions to do things differently. At the last annual town meeting, you might recall, we focused on business and particularly CBC's additional offers for businesses funded through UK SBF, which was a really successful approach. Brought in some different people, got people in the room, had a discussion. The suggestion this year is to theme it more around local community and voluntary groups. We're trying to host it in the food bank building next door if that's available at the time. If not, we will find somewhere else that's suitable with a similar kind of feel. And so again, it's got a theme. We can invite local community organisations to get involved with it, but also hold it as the normal annual town meeting where people can come and ask any question in relevant agencies.
Okay, so it's just for information purposes. In that case, we shall move on to the next item. Does anybody has any comments or questions? So moving on to the next item is the mayoral handbook. It has been recommended the mayoral handbook detailed at Appendix 1 be formally adopted by the council. Do we have any comments or questions on the mayoral handbook? Councillor Katarski.
I noticed just a couple of minor typographical errors, I suppose. Page 2, there's a reference to he is. It should be amended to they are. That's on page 2. Duties of the mayor. The special version of the agenda prompt will be prepared, and the head of finance and support services into the full stop, but should be a common, and the town clerk and chief executive will brief. And decision making line. So page 57. We'll be working with them. I should read town. There's an I there, which should be the town clerk and chief executive, I believe.
You can't Katarski, so some issues. Okay. Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd just like to thank Paul, because I know there's been a lot of time and effort that's gone into producing the rules and to look at it all and separate it, if it is necessary. So I don't want that to go to be missed. There's been a lot of effort put towards that, and a lot of other people have been involved in that too. So I appreciate all of that. I'm particularly buoyed by the comments made by John Buckledy regarding the history that's been put in there. I think it's really nice to know the history behind our town. I think it's important for it not to be lost, and I really think that's a great piece of work that's been put in there as well. Looking at the content, I think it's pretty much common sense. I don't think there's anything that's really controversial in there. However, by way of update and modernisation of the actual guidelines, I'm surprised that it hasn't included anything on social media, which I think is in pertinent in the times of modern times that we should include. But that's all the comments I have to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Otwell. Councillor Holly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm pleased to see this document. I think it's right that all members, particularly the newer members, even though we've been here for a year, can actually see something about the history of the town, as Councillor Atwell has just pointed out. I think it sets out the role of mayor very clearly, and the responsibilities and so on. And it is the importance of the role, I think, and it's not something that one can skirt round, to my knowledge or to my belief. So I hope all members have had the opportunity to read what's here and understand the importance of this role. It is something that shouldn't be taken on too easily. It does involve a considerable amount of additional work and so on. And it's something that has worked over the years. I think we've had a mayor since 1865. It's not that just to say that justifies the role, but from the document and what can be read, I think one hopefully will see that it is a role that is important. It's a role that's recognised within not only the county, but in the country as well. And anyone has any ideas of replacing it, then I think it's going to be very difficult to see how it could actually be done. To sort of chop and change a different member to receive invitations from somewhere else and so on, I think it would become actually a nightmare. So I'm very much in favour of this document and how it's written and produced. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Crawley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I love the pomp and ceremony as mentioned in this. I like the idea of keeping all this nice and secure and formalised. But just to have one modern, some might say, suggestion with the form of address, which I hadn't seen mentioned in the rest of the document, where for a man the accepted formal address is his worship, for a woman what does it say, for a woman the worshipful. I was just wondering, just to keep things in line with how the world seems to be kind of spinning, and just to not put off future councillors to the role, that we may put in something in there to allow for people that don't define themselves in either of them two categories there, maybe. Not, we don't need to expand it to all, however many thousands of formal of names that people would like to be called, but maybe a there in there would be a sensible option going forward.
Can I hand over to Paul for that?
Well, the short answer is that sounds like a good idea. Just allow me to refer to people who know more about civic matters than I do before we agree that change, and then we'll agree if providing that's okay. Just to remind members that the ability to call a mayor worshipful is something that we treasure because we were allowed to do it, unlike most town councils. So the suggestion doesn't change that, but we need to be quite careful, given all the lengths that we've gone to enable us to use that term, that we don't do something without thinking about it and then make a mistake. So I'm happy to agree that change, provided there aren't any unforeseen consequences. If I can just respond to Councillor Atwell's point on social media as well.
Sure.
So the document does say something about press, and the mayor is certainly subject to the council's code of conduct on media, which you're all subject to. I agree, we do need to review the mayor and social media. It's a really tricky area. So we did set up a Facebook account for the mayor to be ready for when the new mayor came in, but it didn't quite work. And then Facebook changed their settings and it got a bit confusing about whether the mayor's a person or an organisation. Facebook keep changing their rules, so we want to do it well. It's difficult because the current mayor and the last mayor have both been really good at going to an event and putting pictures on Facebook straight away, which worked really well for the public. We're never going to be as quick as that, but it might be appropriate to move to something more corporate moving forwards, which would be more supported for the mayor. But a mayor will always be free to do their own stuff as they want to within the guidelines. All the guidelines obviously apply to what the mayor does on social media as well as in other contexts.
Thank you, Paul. And now, actually, just come back on Councillor Crawley's suggestion. I think that's a really good suggestion, actually, if it can be done to try and make some of those titles more gender neutral. I think that's a good idea. Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to see that this has come to council for us to all approve, hopefully. You won't be surprised that as a family, we're extremely proud of our years as mayor. And I just want to say to all of you that are sitting here around the table that have never had the opportunity today, don't ever say you can't do it because of your own personal situation. That's why things are in here, like the personal allowance, the mayor's allowances, to help and support those that need that additional help and support financially. You know, the allowance is there to be used to enable. So please don't ever think you've got a reason to say no to having that opportunity. It's such a privilege to do the role. Please, you know, think it through when the time comes and go for it. But each mayor does their year in their way, and in their, you know, they develop their year and they contribute to the community in their own way. No way is right or wrong, and we should all be there to support that mayor.
Thank you. And just my comments. I think this is a really good idea. I think it's such an unknown. I've never been a mayor before. I mean, who knows what you should be doing or not doing. So having something like this that sets out some guidance is really, really helpful. Knowing what you should wear to a certain event or what, you know, what a dress code is in today's terms is not always easy. And I think we could do with adding some information to this document, but I think, you know, it's probably going to be a fluid document that we can add to. So I think this current format, it's very good and it's going to be really helpful. What I've found from my own perspective of being the mayor for this current year, it is a lot. It's very tiring. It is quite exhausting if you say yes to everything. But like Councillor Jones said, you don't, you know, you make it your own. But what I have also found is that it is a role that is giving the townspeople a lot of pride, and people really enjoy having the mayor at their events. So, you know, it is a really worthwhile role, and I've definitely changed my view on it since doing it and being involved in it. I can really see the importance of it. So, yes, Councillor Jones.
Can I just make one suggestion that when we ever have a new councillor or we have a new council, that the historic nature of this document is actually included in our induction packs going forward. Because we as councillors are often asked, well, what's the history? And I think if we have that from day one as new councillors as well, we'll all be informed and able to give the history and have that civic pride in what we're saying as well.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. And yeah, just to add to that, it's really helpful to know up front what it is that you're agreeing to if you consider this role. So all of the information in here is really, really helpful, including being able to go shopping, I think I saw. Okay, so Councillor Hollick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A suggestion has been made to alter this to perhaps bring it up to date, and I'm not against that, but I do emphasise what has been said about the historical significance of this town, and this town as one out of many who can or which can have this address. It is important in that sense. It does distinguish us from other town and parish councils. But I'm wondering if a proposal is going to be made tonight on the basis of what's been said, or whether this is something that will come back to us at a future meeting. I suppose community services would be the appropriate. No.
I suggest it's either FGP or full council.
Okay, yes, so are we going to wait for a formal proposal to be put forward? Because it's just been openly discussed tonight, but not necessarily, I don't think, a particular form has been put forward.
Thank you, Councillor Holly. Councillor Jones.
Can I suggest that we agree the recommendation, that we agree the response laid out in Appendix 1 with the amendments that have been requested from Councillor Crawley for the inclusion, if they are permissible, that we give officers the opportunity to do that and adopt this, because I think we're all in agreement. It's a really good document with, you know, a lot of information and useful information. I don't see the need for it to come back. Personally, if we're just talking about an amendment of a couple of inclusions around terminology.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. That is my understanding, that it can be added to.
Second. No, I'm all right.
Okay, so it is recommended that the mayoral handbook detailed at Appendix 1, along with the amendments which have been put forward by Councillor Crawley, if it's found that they can be added, be formally adopted by the council. Is there a proposer? Councillor Jones, and seconder, Councillor Crawley.
Councillor Crawley's really fast, that's why.
Okay, all those in favour? That is unanimous. I declare the motion to be carried. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so the next item is legislation enabling remote attendance and proxy voting. I am going to pass the call.
So members, as you would have seen, the government have proposed two changes to legislation, one of which would enable hybrid meetings and the other which would enable proxy voting. This is the decision we need to make tonight because of the time scale for the consultation response. We were all invited to take part in compiling a draft response. Councillor Jones and Councillor John Gurney took part in that discussion with myself, and what you've got is literally a draft version of the consultation document in front of you following the discussion we had. Inevitably, even amongst Councillor Jones and Councillor John Gurney, there were some minor disagreements that we weren't quite sure about. Fundamentally, though, I think the recommendation is that the approach would be the hybrid meetings should be allowed, and as far as possible, it should be down to each council then to set its own standing orders as to what it would want to do. So this isn't about us deciding exactly for Dunstable Town Council how we would or wouldn't want to operate and how many times a year we would want to allow people to dial in, or any of those considerations one might get into. In terms of the legislation, our suggestion is that the legislation should be as broad as possible, because how on earth can you write legislation which specifies in much detail how we should operate, how a remote parish in the middle of Wales should operate? And so we need choices, I suggest. And in terms of proxy voting, however, the suggestion is that we don't support proxy voting, really on the basis that one of the strengths of a council is that members have reports, you debate a subject, and following debate you vote. And on the principle of predetermination, you walk in the room with an open mind. Even if you've got a strong view, you still have an open mind to listen to other views, and then you vote. Whereas as soon as you introduce proxy voting, your people are voting before they arrive and without hearing debate. Yeah. So that would be the reason not. There are pros and cons. So happy to make any amendments if you want to, and documentation. And I think there is one specific where we were asking for a response, which was how many?
How many should be in attendance?
Yeah, how many members would want to?
Good question. What proportion of council current elected members are likely to seek attendings?
Yes, so we just need a show of hands as to how many of you might want to attend virtually if that was allowed.
You mean generally, occasionally, or?
Anything.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Do you want now?
So this is a show of hands of those that might be interested in attending a meeting virtually, if the opportunity was okay. So all those that would like to, if they could. 7. That's more than half.
Yeah.
So we would answer yes to that.
Yes, that's, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so so this is a response to a consultation that's been put forward by CBC. We've got copies of all of the questions. Councillor Jones and Councillor Gurney have worked with council to put together a response. Are there any questions about the response itself, Councillor Tamara?
Not specifically about the response, but I just wonder, for clarification's sake, in terms of a hybrid meeting, and on an important issue, the member that is not in the room, are they allowed to vote, and the vote will be counted exactly the same way as everybody else? Okay, I think that's okay, because I remember debating this at CBC and was like, no, we're not going to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Tamara. Councillor Holly.
Thank you. In spite of perhaps the majority of members feeling that the hybrid approach is right, I would like to say that I would have hoped that the default position would be to attend in person. Yeah. That being the default position. I don't know how members individually feel about taking part in a meeting remotely. It was obviously came in very much during COVID when we weren't allowed to meet, but I certainly found that not being face to face does have certain disadvantages, and to have a proper debate, I feel members should be able to look each other in the eye, so to speak. Hence what I said at the beginning, that I would hope the default position for each and every person would be to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holly. Councillor Alderman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my understanding is we're discussing what we're going to put in our consultation response, but as a council, at some later point, we will probably set our own rules around this. And my view would be that hybrid has a limited role, but it would be something that we work out as a council for what works for us. But yeah, my view for what is right for the consultation may be different to my view for what's right for our personal town council, if that makes sense.
Exactly that, Councillor Alderman. So this is a response to a consultation. It's not guaranteed that actually proxy voting or hybrid meetings will be introduced. It's just, we're just composing our response to submit to CVC in response to their consultation. And if it was ever agreed, we would then have to look at council policies and standing orders, etc., and agree or not to change those accordingly. Councillor Atwell.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to really restate what Councillor Peter Hollick's just mentioned. You know, I do feel strongly in the same position that you really do need to have a proper debate around here. However, I do see for proper function of council and making sure that we can move on progressively, that there will be times when some people just can't make it, and it'd be very important for those people to be involved. But very much what you were saying, it should be the default position that everyone should be here if at all possible, and it only be seen as an emergency type thing if someone really can't make it. Thank you.
Councillor Atwell. It is my feeling that most people would rather be here face to face, but I think it's, if it was ever agreed that it would happen, be nice to have the option for family, work-life balance, etc. So, okay, so it is recommended that the council agrees this response to the current government consultation, laid out in Appendix 1, response to consultation. So, do we have a proposer for this response to be submitted? Councillor Jones, do we have a seconder? Alderman? All those in favour? That is unanimous. I declare the motion to be carried. Thank you very much. Right, okay, so next item is the neighbourhood plan, and we've got 2 recommendations. I think I may hand over to Paul to set those out to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Becky is online, so she may jump in as well if there are questions. So, members, as you know, you decided the corporate plan to explore the option of having a neighbourhood plan for Dunstable, and then you set aside some money which we used to work with the consultancy over the summer to review what the needs and context are in Dunstable, what the opportunities might be, and to do some consultation work with yourselves and with residents about the demand for a neighbourhood plan, what would be in scope for a neighbourhood plan potentially if we carried one out in Dunstable. The consultants we work with have been really good at doing that piece of work. They're certainly the leading experts in this field, and they provided us with a report which for me is fairly clear and well written and describes the options available to us. In some respects, planning is an art as well as a science, and there's a lot of unknowns going forward in terms of what might come forward from Dunstable, what any changes in the law might be, what CBC's future positions will be. In some ways, it's quite a tricky time to be considering this subject, as CBC are just in the early stages of developing their new plan. And discussions we've had with CBC, while they haven't been negative, CBC have certainly not been saying it would be great to work with you on doing the two things together. CBC have clearly got their process to go through. And to be fair to them, many towns and parishes at various stages in neighbourhood plans or not, so there's not a lot of scope for joint work. So our recommendation is not to go ahead with a neighbourhood plan at this point. We've listed against the 12 possible items what may or may not be possible. The consultants have identified that they think it would require £60,000 over the first 3 years. There may well be grants available for. That does depend a bit on the current government's approach to neighbourhood planning, which has been a bit up in the air. We may well find out more about that once the devolution white paper comes out any day now. The £60,000 figure, I would advise you, will go up, it won't go down if we go ahead with the neighbourhood plan. And talk to many people in similar situations. As soon as something changes, something gets challenged, another idea comes through, something wants redesigning, costs rise, they don't go down. And once you have a plan, it's not just a couple of years, it's several years to get it in place. And then also, as soon as it's in place, you then need to begin to work on redo it again. So it becomes a part of council business and it becomes another line in the budget. I think we would have to either take someone on part-time or add someone's hours considerably, as well as the grant funding to make it happen. Although also recognise funding isn't the only issue. Happy to take a question that I can answer.
Thank you, Paul. I might like to speak first if that's okay.
Yes, go on.
Thank you. I don't think it's that much of a secret that I've really always wanted a neighbourhood plan, because in my mind I thought it would really help us to protect against overdevelopment and to really protect some areas in our town that we wouldn't want CBC necessarily to take control of decisions over. However, since we've been involved in the process, and I can see there's a fairly weak argument for pursuing it, and given the budget discussions we've had and our need or urge to reduce our spend, I personally don't think that right now, at this moment in time, the neighbourhood plan would be a good idea, although I do understand that we could pursue it at another time if we really wanted to. So that's all that I really wanted to say. I'm going to move on to Councillor Jones and then Councillor Warden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. From my perspective, I think if we were a town that had pockets of land still to be developed and big areas that we could redevelop, then I'd say it might be worth a bigger conversation and a bigger discussion. But I agree with you, now is not the time with our budget issues and our budgetary conversations we're going to have over the next few months. But we're a landlocked town. We don't have any pockets of land that are going to get developed. We don't have any large areas that are ready for redevelopment at this stage. And I, for one, think our money is better spent elsewhere supporting our budget needs right this minute.
Councillor Warden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I recognise those arguments Councillor Jones put forward. They make a lot of sense. The budget is concerning. My view would be that there are a few pockets in the town that are potential sources of development in the future, and my hope would be that we could do some kind of neighbourhood plan that might be more light touch. It might involve some of those. I mean, I've got a lot of interest around the urban design codes, and a couple of those maybe that could cost less, but also building off of what the town clerk said about the levelling up white paper coming out soon. I would like my view is it would be ideal that we make this decision once we know what that white paper looks like, because if the status of a neighbourhood plan is stronger, weaker, the same, then we as a council are making a more informed decision about what we're voting for. So that would be my personal view on the plans.
Thank you, Councillor Alderman. Okay. Right one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, taking on board what other councillors just mentioned, and I quite take on board what's been said about the constraints regarding the budget and the concerns regarding that. And having been involved with the working committee as part of this, I'm very much split between my decision on how this should go forward. As I said, the budgetary concerns really are the biggest prominent issue at the moment, and that obviously should take the biggest concentration. However, it was very interesting in being part of the working group is that consultants were able to highlight various areas that I wasn't even aware of, and I'm sure other councillor members weren't either, of areas of influence that we do have in law and areas of influence that we do have regarding whether it should be an industrial area or town area and things like that as well, which was quite interesting and I don't think were common knowledge before that point. So I wouldn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and just say that we're going to refrain from doing this purely on budget and then realising that it would have been a good thing to be able to do so in the future. So I don't think it's something that we should completely dismiss. But if we do agree that we put it back because of the budgetary constraints, I completely understand that, but I don't think we should lose foresight of it completely.
That's right. Just to come back slightly on your points, I think I do agree with you. It's my understanding that we could, as a council, hopefully build a relationship with Central Bedfordshire Council to input more into the local plan, hopefully have some influence on that. And that also the work that we've done so far, if we did decide later on to do the neighbourhood plan or to pursue it, the work we've done wouldn't be wasted, or the money that we spent on consultation to the consultants wouldn't be wasted. So I don't think there's too much risk in terms of that work being wasted or time we've put into it being wasted. I just thought it might help to clarify that. Councillor Tamara.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I would slightly disagree with some of the members that think this is a good idea, and I'm just going to put it out there. I think it's a terrible idea. I think what we've said before, we've made the argument many times that CBC is a unitary authority that makes decision on planning. And therefore, this council's responsibility is to rather help to understand or, sort of form an alliance with CBC rather than spending your money on such project. Because if we as a town spend whatever, £60,000, you still would not have the power to override planners that understand the law better than you do. Developers understand the law better than you do. There's ways around everything you can think about. The government changes the laws all the time. And honestly, Councillor Jones just said, this town is landlocked. Okay, there's not much happening here. In my view, is we need to build more to develop this town to ensure that we have stores and businesses that succeed. You need, to really develop your town, and it's about growing the population. And to do that, you need density of population. That's my view. You can't develop a town without the people. So yes, we want it to be nice and clean. The reality is you might need to build more somewhat, but develop what you already have, because we are landlocked. There's not much land in Dunstable.
Thank you, Councillor Tamara. Councillor Alderman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to pick up on a few of those points. Neighbourhood plans aren't inherently anti-development. They are in fact a way to guide development. So if we could use design codes to create density that the people of Dunstable might like more, that would be really positive. And that's the sort of thing I'm interested in. Development may come, and if so, we would like it to be development that's subject to local democratic control. I note your point about CBC in terms of that being our district authority, but my view is that there is not a majority in Central Bedfordshire Council for Dunstable. We have only so many councillors on that council, whereas everyone in this room is here to think about Dunstable. So I like the idea of this council having more of a say over the town, but you do make valid points.
But
Thank
can I come
you.
back for 1 second, man? No, just a second. Just to say, CBC do have a design code, okay, that represents all of Central Bedfordshire and every different town. You know, you can almost change in terms of the presentation of the different area. Developers have to follow almost what's already there. Okay, that's the design code that we're talking about. So, you know, it does work. We just need to work with them to make sure it's better use. Right.
Thank you, Councillor Tamara. Councillor Crawley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I think this was money well spent. I think this is a good idea to look into. I think it was the sensible approach to look at how we can protect our town, if we can do this, that and the other. After reading the review of the proposed options and the officer assessment of the proposals, I think it's pretty clear that this wouldn't really benefit us at this time. I wouldn't be against potentially reviewing this again in just this document specifically, again in 12 months or something, just to kind of see have things changed, if that's something that is an option. But at this point, I think, yeah, there's really no point in moving this forward. So shelf it, basically.
Thank you, Councillor Crawley. Okay, I think we can probably move on to the two recommendations, which I shall group together because they are pretty much the same one, right? So the recommendation being for members to review the consultant's report and town council officer recommendations regarding understanding the full implications and limitations of a neighbourhood plan, and to decide not to progress further with a neighbourhood plan for Dunstable at this stage. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Jones, seconder. Councillor Tamara. All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? Oh, okay, no, that's it. Okay, thank you. I counted wrong. Okay, so I declare that motion to be carried. Thank you very much, everybody. The next item is Watling House. I think I'm going to hand over again to Paul for this one.
So members, something else to agree a response to. So CBC have been asked to register the full spread of Watling House as an asset of community value under the Localism Act. As you probably know, that would mean that the owner of the site, CBC on this occasion, wouldn't be able to sell it without giving interested community groups 6 months to put together a proposal for the site. After the 6 month period, they're still able to sell it to who they like, for what they like, for whatever reason they like. So in that sense, it's fairly limited. CBC have in a way contacted us to say, do we have any comments or views on the proposal to register it as an asset of community value? The report recommends that we do, because it could be a benefit to the community rather than just go for commercial sale, but very much for members to comment and reply, or we could choose not to respond at all, depending on the members' view.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, so I think this is a good idea, actually. But I'm going to pass over to Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to see that this has come through. I was aware from the community group that they've made the request. And I think whilst we've got a community that would actually like to take on this facility and the breadth of what they're offering to the other members of the community as well, I think it's only right that we give them the full opportunity to be able to develop their plans, and hope Central Bedfordshire Council listen to those plans and actually support them in developing it to retain as a community facility for the town.
Councillor Jones, Councillor Tomorrow.
Madam Mayor, all I wanted to do is concur with what Councillor Jones just said. I think it will be a great idea to support this to stay as a community property and given the opportunity to, the community group that are willing to explore what they can do. The 6 months is there for them to use, and failing that CBC can still do well, but I think it's right for the opportunity to be given to this community to do the best they can.
Thank you, Councillor Tomorrow. Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just say that, to echo what other people have said really, that, what in-house do see as a very important part to our town. I think our community have relied on it for so long for so many different features and services. And I really do think that, the purpose going forward lies with our community. And I fully support what's being proposed here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Atwell. So the proposed response is that the Town Council strongly supports the application to list the property as an asset of community value. Property has clearly provided strong community benefit over many years and has potential to continue to do so with a viable proposal from one or more community groups. There's 2 more points to that which you've all read. So do we have, so it is recommended that the council amends the proposed response as required and agrees the version to be submitted to Central Bedfordshire Council. So, Councillor Brennan.
Sorry, Chair. I just wanted, I support all the points that have already been made. I've also spoken to the community group who put this in. I support them in all their efforts. I think it might be a good idea to mention within the response, because there is a slight technical thing about, as it says in the paperwork, there are 2 different points to community asset. And I think we need to point out that we are aware that the building isn't currently in use, because that's the first aspect of it, whether it is currently in use, and we're aware that it is not currently in use, but that in the recent past it has been, because I think that's the sticking point that is going, that where this may fall foul is that the building isn't currently in use, and the term of recent past is debatable, and it's completely up to CBC whether they determine the building to have been used in this way within the recent past, which could be anything from 6 months to 10 years, depending on whether they deem that to be true or not. So I think it might be worth us considering putting something in to specify to Central Bedfordshire that we believe that it has been used in the recent past, that we believe that the recent past should be taken to include the uses of, just in the pandemic, it was, it's
within the scope of recent.
it's there. It was a vaccination centre during the pandemic. It was, and there's a very strong belief that and likelihood that it will be a community hub going forward if it is allowed to be. So I don't know if you can amend that, Paul, if you captured what I was, if that made sense.
Absolutely makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. I think that's a really good point, actually, because it's not mentioned here, and actually it probably should be, because like you say, that's up to translation, isn't it? Mentioning that it has been used in the recent past is up for translation. It's a good point, and it will do. It's Councillor Sollick.
Madam Mayor, I'm not sure whether this is the right place to suggest it, but it was suggested in the past that we should have some recognition of the fact that this is a historical site, and that it was obviously sidings and a station. I don't know exactly what is still there, there are aspects of that history. And I'm just wondering whether this is the appropriate place to perhaps mention that we would like that to be retained if that is so. I don't know how quite how you word it.
Yeah,
That's beyond that.
the turntable is still there.
Yeah,
You can see that.
there, certainly.
Yeah.
Whether the remains of the gasometer is something I don't know, but certainly there is reference to the former nature of the station and so on.
Thank you, councillor Holly. I don't know, would that be something that you'll be voting to add?
I don't think it's quite relevant. It's definitely worth minuting for future reference. I don't think we put it in the technical response to this because, as you've already explained, the technical response is really important. We get it right and relevant. So we'll certainly include the first comments you made in the technical response, and we'll minute and remember the historic.
Thank you, councillor Holly. Did anybody else want to add? Okay. Now this is correct, isn't it? So going back to the recommendation, it is recommended that the council amends the proposed response as required and agrees a version to be submitted to the Central Bedfordshire Council. So that which is set out, and with the additional point to note that the Watling House has been in recent use. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Brennan and a seconder.
Second.
Councillor Tamara. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. I declare that motion to be carried. Okay, thank you. The next item is a motion from Councillor Richard Atwell, and I will invite Councillor Atwell to propose his motion, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Given the ongoing cost of living crisis, which is especially prevalent during the Christmas period, when additional severe strains are placed on everyone's budget and cold weather is a prominent feature, I would like to propose that we set up a special Christmas drop-in meeting for our residents, specifically towards raising awareness of the pension credit awareness programme in mind. I would welcome as many councillors as possible to help me with this charitable gesture. We have the posters and leaflets from DWP, and Grove Corner or other suitable venue could be used to set up. This is a very low-cost initiative that has the potential to help so many people of our most vulnerable residents during such a meaningful time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Atwell. Before we move on to questions and comments, I like this idea. However, I am aware that the Central Bedfordshire Council have recently announced the extension of the Household Support Fund, and they're writing to eligible pensioners to let them know if they're eligible for the additional £200. We are also, Dunstable Town Council are hosting a coffee morning tomorrow, specifically aimed at providing local people with information about pension credits, which has been organised alongside Age UK. And my other comment would be that if we were to advertise an event like this, given how close we are to Christmas, I can only imagine it would be on social media. And therefore, if we're advertising an event on social media, it might make sense just to advertise the information on social media instead of actually having an event. But I shall open the room. I think the first person that put their hands up, was it Councillor Brennan?
Yeah.
Councillor Crawley. Councillor Brennan.
You go first.
You sure?
Yeah, go first.
Councillor Crawley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in principle, I think this is not a bad idea. I don't know if hosting it in one of our venues, Grove Corner or whatnot, is going to be effective considering how many people turn up to our surgeries. I don't know if we can, or if we have the contact to have a small table or something. If we've got the leaflets, to just go in the middle of the quadrant on a Saturday morning or something that can just hand out to members of the public, because this isn't a political thing. It should be something that we should be able to kind of get the permission to do if there are councillors around the room that would be willing to get involved. I'm not against this at all. I think even with CBC doing what they're doing for the people that they're trying to get in contact with. People are still entitled to get pension credit, and the current government and previous governments have both recognised that people are not likely to all get the pension credit that they are entitled to. So the more awareness, the better.
Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I'm actually really happy to read this. I think it's a really good idea. Anything I could do to support it, please let me know. I also had a similar thing, which is kind of, it's cheeky to ask, but Choose Foundation have flyers about about uniform and about school equipment, and I was kind of hoping to ask that we could put those flyers up in all the notice boards on the town about funding and grants for school equipment and school uniform. And I think we could put this up in notice boards on town if we have notice boards. So if we have information about getting people on pension credit, let's put it on the notice boards, because our biggest impetus in something like this is getting people on pension credit. We have to do that however we can. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. I think just to come back, I think that's a good idea about the notice board, but I think with the Choose Foundation, we probably need to speak to them because they have very limited staff.
I can speak to them tomorrow. There's a meeting.
Wonderful. Councillor Brennan. Councillor Atwell.
Just coming back on the points that you said before, whilst you appreciate, obviously, my motion was put before, as far as I'm aware, that the post meeting tomorrow with residents and things at the lunch club was even out there for public knowledge. So that's duly taken on board. However, with that in mind, I do feel that there's no reason why we shouldn't be pursuing this as much as possible. And if we can do more, then why not? All governments, whether it be past or present, seem to be wanting to push in this. Martin Lewis has had a big drive for this, and still it's not getting out there. So I don't think we can have enough, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So if we can do it, for a particularly low cost or a way that we can do, I'm open to suggestions, as Councillor Brennan suggested, that we could do it in the quadrant or something like that. Something that's going to be effective. But I just feel that we really owe this as a resident to our residents, and I think particularly with the cold weather payments being taken away from a lot of people, time when most vulnerable, then we've really got a duty of care as councillors to try and do what we can to make sure that is made from awareness purposes to our elderly people.
Completely agree, and I think it's really good that we've encouraged a conversation here, because a few ideas have come up to make it a bit more viable, where we put ourselves in the places that people might see and speak to us, rather than relying on one method to advertise an event like that. So this kind of debate is actually really good. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased that it's come up, and I think it's a great idea. I've just got a couple of points. I think we have to bear in mind that not this weekend, but we've got Twilight Market, so we won't be able to go to Middle Row and Ashton Square because that would be absolutely rammed. The week after that, we've got our final market with Street Food Heroes there as well. So maybe the quadrant is the better place, but I would talk to the quadrant manager sooner rather than later if that's what you want to do, because they are committed to having the Santa float in there. They also have a number of businesses with tables outside in the middle of the quadrant this Saturday as well. My only thing would be is that we are not trained benefit advisors. Yeah. We just need to take that into consideration. Central Bedfordshire Council have trained benefit advisors. I would be very, very careful if we as councillors started to give advice. Use the leaflets as a signposting, and I suppose at this point I should declare I work for DWP. You use the leaflets as a signposting and a direction. Please do not give benefit advice because you're not trained.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Before I move on to the next two, I'd like to pass back to Paul because he did want to come back on.
James has just made one point I was going to make.
Oh.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. So certainly notice boards we can absolutely, and social media will do as well. Pragmatically, somewhere using quadrant possibly midweek, sounds like the best idea. I think being out with people is much more likely to succeed than being stuck in a room expecting them to come to you.
Yeah.
So we can certainly talk to the quadrant manager and work with you to find a date to do that.
Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to take on board what Chief Executive just told us. You know, I think that will probably be the way to go. Probably for the quadrant will be the best place to actually put this up. I do think we can actually set it up quite quickly. We've got the posters, we've got everything we actually need, so we can put it in place very quickly. I do understand obviously there's a lot going on at Christmas, but I do think it's important just to take time out, even if it's just a few hours, that we can do something like this for our residents. So it'd be greatly appreciated if we can accommodate this in any way that we can, because I really do think it's right that we should do so at this time of the year.
Thank you, Councillor Atwell. And just say I'd absolutely be happy to help. I imagine that there are a lot of different people with differing commitments, and therefore I don't know if it might be a suggestion that we do more than one session. However, so given the timing, as long as I'm available, I'd definitely be happy to. I'm going to quickly go to Councillor Brennan because he did actually put his hand up quite a while ago.
Yeah, I was just trying to say, I do know that central government is writing to everyone who is eligible for pension credit. So even if it's just telling people to check their mail and, you know, check for communications from central government, because anyone who is eligible they are trying to be contacted. So, and I avoid the post as much as possible. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, it was just a clarification. I do apologise. I should have just mentioned it before. It was a point I picked up on Councillor Jones, basically say that I fully agree. We're not trained councillors in this type of thing. It purely would be to signpost, to help people out. But also realise that, you know, some elderly residents are bamboozled by online things. They don't know where to look or where to go. Sometimes just signposting can really help them out. So I do think there's a big value in that.
Thank you. Okay, just as a show of hands, who would be interested in perhaps helping with this? Awesome. Okay, that's great.
We have written your names down.
Thank you, Councillor Atwell. Okay, right. So I don't think there's any proposed amendment to this motion. Really, we've got a few suggestions and ideas to kind of make it happen. I guess the next steps will be that it will be organised and dates will be sent out to all councillors. So do I have a proposer for this motion? Oh, Councillor Atwell has proposed it. Of course you have. So do you want to have a seconder? Councillor Blenner has it. Thank you. All those in favour of this motion? That is unanimous. Thank you. I declare that motion to be carried. Thank you very much. Next item is to receive reports and updates by members of Central Bedfordshire Council on matters of interest to the Town Council. I call upon any members, CBC councillors, if there are any matters that you'd like to bring.
I'll go for it. So budget's coming up. It doesn't look good. So pay attention to any of the meetings. If you get a chance to catch them, there will be a joint scrutiny meeting on the 16th or 17th, Monday. It's on Monday. I think it's 16th or 17th. So catch that if you can. Look through the papers. There are a lot of cuts. There's a considerable 16th, Monday the 16th. So there's a considerable number of efficiencies having to be made from Central Bedfordshire Council. They have a considerable number of budgetary pressures within adult social care, within children's services, and they are having to make some really difficult decisions. So try and catch that meeting if you can, or if you get a chance to go, you can go. They're public meetings. Go to them and engage. It would be really good to have other people engaging in those discussions in overview and scrutiny. I think that's the most important thing.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan.
For Councillor Brandon, is it true they're considering cutting? Sorry, stand up for hello, Matt. Is it true they're considering cutting the opening hours for Dunstable Library? You may not have this at the top of your head. I have heard that.
It is within the papers, yes. That there is a recommendation for cuts to opening hours of Dunstable Library. The paperwork says that it will be to bring it in line with other libraries within Central Bedfordshire. So that suggests that we are currently getting more than other people, but it did look like a reduction of like 2 days. There's also a considerable financial removal from libraries, which I think double check the figures on that. I don't want to say the number because I'm going to get it wrong, but it's in hundreds of thousands, I think, of funding to libraries, which will be devastating for a lot of people. I think I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying that. There's also like restructuring of the organisation, which is absolutely horrible terminology. And you're making noises because you don't want me to talk about it. But restructuring of the organisation is likely to mean staff reduction. And it's written out in the paperwork. I'm not saying confidential information. It's literally written within the budget proposals. So, you know, look into it and engage because it's quite upsetting times.
Just to confirm, these are proposals at the moment. These are going to be discussed at council meetings at CBC, and therefore we should take an interest if those matters are of interest to us to see what the outcomes are.
Yes, so the budget has already been released. It was released on Monday. This is the proposed budget, much like ours. The first real discussions of that will be tomorrow evening at 6:30 at the executive meeting, where they will formally propose it. So you could come to that tomorrow evening at 6:30 if you want. That's at Chicksands, and that will be the first proper discussions. Then it will go through overview and scrutiny. There will be joint budget consultations, and then the final budget will happen in February. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Thank you, Councillor Alderman, for your question. No further updates on CDC. Thank you very much. So the next item and the last item is the date of the next meeting of full council, which is Monday, the 35th. Hang on.
Just want to get members to remind you that the informal meeting, the date of that has been changed to Monday, the 27th of January. And the idea being that we will have an informal meeting where we will discuss a few roles for the coming year of the council before we have the next full council meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. So actually, before I announce the last item, this is our last full council before Christmas. So I would like to wish you all a very happy Christmas, wonderful New Year. And the date of the next meeting is Monday, the 3rd of February 2025, and I now can announce that that concludes the business before the council. I declare the